And we're back with me, Johnny McMurray, on the On the Spot Football podcast for yet another fantastic guest. This guy is an ex-teammate of mine and easily one of the Irish League's good guys, Mr. Chris Curran. Chris, how are you, sir?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me, Johnny.
Mate, thank you for dedicating your time. I know time's precious at the minute.
It is. It's going to be very soon. We're expecting our first child here in the next few weeks, so yeah, I couldn't have said it better.
We had to try and squeeze it in nice and early. We're still on intensely borrowed time here. We're checking the watches. We're
looking at the phone every 5 minutes, yeah.
I'm afraid.
But no, excited. I can't wait.
Mate, thank you so much for, as I say, giving me your time. I know it is coming to that stage, but you're one of the guests that I've tortured over the last couple of weeks, maybe months, to try and get yourself on. I know you were hemming and hawing, but I'm so pleased to have you here because you are one of the nicest people that I've ever came across in football.
I don't know about that, but yeah, no, I don't know why I'd said no the first time. I suppose just a little bit apprehensive about doing podcasts, so I wouldn't be the best at them. But no, obviously you're doing a great job. I've watched a number of them recently, and obviously Joe's recently was, I thought, incredible, really powerful stuff. And I think you will have helped many people through doing that. So well done in general, but well done to you and Joe for what was an incredible podcast that will have helped many people, I'm sure.
I'm going to have to hopefully take these tissues away today because I've kind of pre-warned people that this is hopefully going to be a nice one. It's going to be fun, energetic. It's not going to be any tears. I can't do it every week.
We'll see.
You only have so much in reserve, you know, man.
And I'm sure you had many people going probably in their cars and watching at home and stuff because it was, yeah, like I said, powerful stuff. And well done to Joe for being as open and honest and brave about it as he was, and you handled it brilliantly too, I thought. So no, look, I don't think I have to worry about tears. Maybe putting people to sleep might be a risk this week, but we'll try our best.
We'll not have to worry. Listen, obviously you've kind of figured out what way things have worked. You've watched a few, as you've just mentioned, but I like to bring it back to the very start. So, young lad from the country gets a big move to United at some stage, but how does it all start for you? How do you get involved in football? Was it only football?
No, I suppose the culture boy.
We just say down the country.
No, it was mad, I suppose, really. Like, I'm from a very much a GAA community, Swan Bar and Cavan. I love where I'm from, I'm really proud of it. But it was only GAA, there was no football. So it wasn't even something that was really that accessible. I didn't know a team to play for, or didn't really know anybody that was playing football locally. It was all GAA. So I didn't join a football club until I was almost 14. I hadn't played a football match, like an organised game on grass with referees and officials, offsides, all that, until I was touching 14. So in that respect, I suppose my journey is quite different than a lot of other people that you might have had on. But yeah, a couple of months before my 14th birthday, joined Ballinamallard and loved it. Like a really good club to join. Really good youth structure, well organised, good coaches. And yeah, a coach called Brian Kahn took me in at Ballinamallard, and still very close to him today. He's a brilliant guy, brilliant coach. And it all just sort of started from there.
One thing that you left out was they must have the best groundsman in the country. The pitch is a carpet. It always has been.
Yeah.
I think it always will be. It's unbelievable.
I know. Unbelievable, yeah. I don't know, maybe that's was part of the problem. People really enjoyed going there. And
everyone, it was like a 2-hour journey, but everyone was like, you get to play on this.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
I know, it's like a carpet every week, and I loved my time there. Played there, obviously, through the youth levels, and then, had the opportunity to go to England, and then everything sort of went full circle and ended back there. But any time that I was there, I loved it. It was just a brilliant environment to learn in, and the ground and everything. It's just a really good club with really good people around it. And yeah, it's absolute carpet.
In terms of you being that young, not playing football until, as you just said there, like about 14, but what made you pick football? Was it an instant love? Because most people who are involved in like a GAA setup usually then go on to be Gaelic footballers. Like, they love it. They're that dedicated. They're so much different than obviously what we are in terms of footballers. Like, people think we're we're slouches. Like, we don't really train in there. Guys are dedicated. There's maybe not as much money in it, and they're in 5 days a week and
Yeah.
look like the fittest people on the planet, which is
Yeah.
horrible. But
Yeah.
what made you pick football then? Did you feel like you were better at it, or was it just I loved it?
No, I suppose when I said I didn't really play football until I was 14, I didn't play in an organised setting, but I'd been playing, on my back street at school, from basically whenever I could walk. Had a football at my feet, so I loved it. I always did, and always supported Man United, and I was obsessed with football. It was like it was a world that wasn't really accessible to
Just
me.
because of the area.
Exactly. So we never really didn't think about football in any other sort of context other than it being a hobby and loving it and supporting United and stuff like that. And then it was just a really exciting time when I actually, one way or another, got into Ballinamalard and actually started playing football and loving it every week. And things just completely snowballed from that moment. 2.5 years later, I was at United, so it was just a crazy, crazy time. But I've always been torn between football and J, because I love my club and where I'm from. And people probably don't even realise that I was torn probably for a bit longer than I would like to admit. I remember going back to Cliftonville, or signing for Cliftonville, and then a few years later, Jared Little Skin, he pulled me over. We were doing the warm up, and he showed me a picture on his phone, and it was me in the team of the week for my club in Cavan. And this was,
Mid-season.
Exactly. So he half laughed, half wondered what I was doing, and it's tough because you are torn and you wanna. Anybody that's part of a GA club or a part of a GA community knows how much it means to the people of that area.
Yeah.
And you want to play with your family, and you want to play for your family and your friends, and that's always been a pull. And the one thing about retirement is it's been good to go back and play and not feel that I'm doing anything
Guilty.
wrong. Exactly.
Or injuries pop up and you're
Exactly.
going, how do I pretend that I wasn't injured before I got
Exactly.
here?
Thank God that didn't happen too often, or I would have been in trouble. But that was it was a funny part of my journey, I suppose.
What age did you get the opportunity to go over to United? And at that stage, how does that come about for you?
I was probably 15, 16. Yeah, I would say 15 when the first time I went across, and it came about through playing for the schoolboys, Northern Ireland schoolboys, the under-16 team here, and probably mainly playing in the Victory Shield. That was a huge sort of window for young players then, and it helped me to have played in it a year young, which again is mad when you think about it too.
It's quite unheard of actually for someone to go up a year earlier in the Victory Shield.
Yeah, there was a few of us. There was me and Connor Devlin, and Paddy McLaughlin was in that. I'm sorry, I'm probably doing somebody else at the service. I think there were 3 or 4 of us anyway, and we had an unbelievable year that year. We did well, and I think we beat England. I think Corey Evans might have scored in that game. We beat them 1-0 over there, which again was huge. But this was all just bizarre and surreal to me after, only having really come into the sport a little over a year earlier, and then 2 years later, had the opportunity to go over on trial, and impressed enough that they invited me back again. And soon after that, just incredible that a call came through to say that they were offering a contract.
Being a big United fan, you couldn't have picked a better club to potentially go and sign for, so what a dream. But were you the only one from here to go at that stage from that time? I know, I
think Connor came over, we would have been over maybe around the same times on trials or visits or training weeks, and then Connor signed a year after me just because of the age difference. I think Connor was in 1992 and I was in 91, so going over, I knew Corey, but that was probably it. Those are a really good group of Irish lads, but I had to wait a year for Connor to come over, but it was great to have him, obviously, that company and stuff. So there was a good group of us.
What's it like making a transition from a little town pretty much where, as you say, it's not really accessible to play much football, and then you're undoubtedly probably the biggest club on the planet?
It's hard to put it into words. We were going through my town about a year and a half ago. It was Ryan Kern's stag, and we were going to Carrick and Shannon,
Okay.
and Rory Hale was on it as well. And like we had to go through where I live to get to Carrick and Shannon, and we were going through. Rory just like stopped talking, and Rory likes to talk a little bit, so it was just complete silence as we were going through the town, and like he didn't speak for like another 15 minutes after we got out the other side, just in disbelief the size of it, what it was. And he just turned around to me after about 15 minutes like, how did you come out of this?
Yeah.
And that's like, it's not like Moscow or something, it's a nice place, but it was funny, but it's just surreal. It was like you had to pinch yourself at times when I went across first, because it was so different, and these players that you were seeing on a daily basis had only existed on TV, and they weren't really real in your mind up to that point. And then you go over, and it's just absolutely unbelievable.
The complex alone, the training facilities that they have there, is next to none. I remember going over at one stage for a thing to do with like George Best, and I was like, this is insane. They had like, at that stage there was no 3Gs about, but there was 3Gs at the back. There was obviously all these pitches, and I always remember being like, there's so many Audis.
Yeah.
And I think that obviously the club was sponsored by it, so like every player, like every car was like an year going. And I've never really seen an Audi before, but there was hundreds in the car park, and you think, well, this is
I didn't get one.
No, unfortunately. Unfortunately not.
But no, then it was unbelievable. There's been a lot of talk about the facilities and stuff in the last few years. I think Gary Neville's been quite vocal about it not being really up to standard, because other clubs have made strides. But then it was state of the art, and it's just unbelievable. Something like a kid like me at the time just couldn't fathom, the how good the facilities were and what you had at your fingertips, and all of the technology that there was then in the game. And it was unbelievable just to have come where I came from, to be there and to be able to experience it every day. It was unreal.
When you go from a part-time setup to full-time football, how big of a distance was that for you? Like, did you feel it straight away where you're like, God, I'm not fit, I'm not strong? What sort of things did they do to try and help you move you along a wee bit quicker?
That transition, obviously, since then I've thought a lot about it, and it was huge, and it was obviously too big a distance to overcome in terms of where those other boys had been and where they started and where I had started, and trying to make that ground up. And I realised quite early, to be honest, that it was probably going to be too big a mountain to climb. That wasn't being defeatist. I tried as hard as I could every single day. I wanted to try and be the most or the hardest working person in the building if I could, and I always had a good attitude in that respect. But I knew quite early, very early, that it was going to be a massive ask, because these lads have been in the system from
3-4 years, maybe
more.
Maybe. Yeah.
Some of them were in there from maybe 8 years old, in a really good organised environment every single day, or multiple days per week. So much sort of contact time, and ultimately I suppose it was just too big a mountain to climb.
When you get introduced to your youth team, United must have had some huge names at that age. Who would have been a part of that youth team?
I think probably the biggest then. I don't think anybody would have known them then, obviously, but probably one that would have been sort of making waves around the sort of fan base, if you like, would have been Danny Welbeck then, because he was coming through, and I think he had already made the youth cup's obviously a huge thing over there, and I think he had already made his youth cup debut for the under 18s, and he was 15 or 16, so he'd been identified obviously as a massive talent even that early, and he was, seeing him up close and personal every day. If you didn't feel that it was going to be too big a bridge to gap, you sort of knew when you saw that standard that you had a long way to go. But Danny was brilliant. But I think you had great players all across the board. Then you were talking about the likes of Tom Cleverley was in and around that group. Danny Drinkwater. You had Craig Cathcart from here, Corey. The players in my age group, Ollie Norwood, Maddie James, who's had a decent career, and then you had players like Makeda, who came in, and players like that who made a splash at the beginning. You had loads, but
he really came in and hit the ground, didn't he? Like, remember he came in, it was like this new kid, and he scored. Was it at Anfield or something?
He had a couple of huge goals, yeah, and he was only 16 at the time, so he'd literally gone from maybe training with us maybe 6 months before to being in the first team, and he scored against, I think it was Aston Villa, in a massive goal. There was the sort of Cruyff turn at the edge of the box, and then he
turned it.
Yeah, and then a week later, I think he might have scored a late goal again against Sunderland or somebody. But no, he did brilliant, and a few of those players that did really, really well, and went on, had really good careers.
In terms of like you being there, do you look back on it and think you were happy with your time there just for what it was? Because I know, like, from speaking to certain people, they go and they think, oh, I could have done this and I could have done that. But at that level, I think we're probably more geared up towards helping kids improve now, in terms of maybe introducing them to like full-time football, or maybe not even full-time, but they're getting, as you talked on there, more contact time.
Yeah,
it allows them to be more confident and control of the ball and understanding the game probably a bit more. And at that stage, it just wasn't set up the way it is now for people like you to sort of be successful.
Yeah. And then I've listened to Joe recently talk about it. I've listened to other players. I think even Mulgrew was asked a question not long ago, but why hasn't it happened about your career here, but going across the water and things. And I think multiple people have been really honest about it and probably said they just maybe weren't at the level, and I probably say the same thing. I just probably wasn't at the level to be able to play for United, but the contact time, I think, is an important point, and I think we're starting to help players here go across and make a better impression when they're going over, that they're physically ready, that they've had more contact time, they're closer to being at the same sort of level technically as the players they're going over to play with. But for me, in my time over there, I would probably say that I gave it everything and I didn't have any regrets. So I think that's all you can really do, is just give it your all, and come back and say that you left no stone unturned, really. And I've never had any sort of hang-ups about that part of it.
You were at United at a very successful period. Like, they were winning leagues, they were Champions Leagues. You were obviously a part of these things, or very close to being a part of these things, but how far do you think you were away from it? Like, you obviously maybe training with the first team different days, or training with people who are involved in those squads. And what was that like as a young lad, being like, these are my heroes? Like, United's United. Like, if you're playing and there's, I don't know, Gary Neville's, there's Wayne Rooney's and all these people just walking around as if they're like, they are normal people, but the outside world, they're not normal, they're just stars. Yeah, no,
exactly. It's completely surreal, and you just sort of have to. It's strange because you go between that sort of trying to be professional mode, and just
don't want to look like a fan.
Exactly, and you don't want to be asking them to sign things in the corridor and things like that. But at the same time, you do. You go home in the evening, you're like, that was crazy. And 5 years ago, if I had thought that this was going to happen, you just wouldn't have believed it. So yeah, you do have to sort of flip between seeing them almost, not really, but almost as peers. You're trying to be a professional. You're trying to, and you have to obviously be professional in that sense. But at the same time, it's just madness, complete madness to follow these players growing up, and then you're in the same building or on the same pitch. And yeah, you just have to be grateful for it. Really, you just have to. I mean, it is a hugely impactful thing in your life. To go across, to have that experience, to play for a club like that. It will probably always follow me, that sort of tag of being an ex-Manchester United player, and that's something you have to live with, and that can be really difficult, especially when you come home. But at the same time, when you weigh everything up, you just have to be grateful that you had the opportunity, and it's an experience that people would give their right arm for, really. So you just have to appreciate it and take it for what it was.
One of the things that we just spoke about before we started was you got the experience, like winning the Champions League as a player. Like, you may not have been in the first team, but you were there.
Yeah,
you got to go to these things. What's that like? It's hard to get tickets for a Champions League final.
I know.
It's hard to get tickets for, well, probably not hard for United at the minute, but I mean, it's
hard to get there for United at the minute. No, it was amazing. I mean, the standard at the time that I went over was probably as good as you can think of in Manchester United's history, really. They were winning league titles left, right and centre. The 2 years that I was there, they won the Champions League the first year in Moscow against Chelsea, and we were lucky enough to travel to that. And then the year after, they lost against Barcelona in Rome, and we were lucky enough to go to that as well. So
the first year is the last year of Ronaldo, isn't it? Before before he left.
Yeah. It was the year that John Terry slipped and we were behind the goals and it was just chaos.
What a memorable moment though. Like
I
it's
know.
like you're just sitting there watching this and John Terry blooper reel and like do you know what I mean?
I know. Yeah, you just have to. Some days you think, was I really there? Was I at that? And it was just a brilliant experience all in.
That the final Champions League final before we move on is obviously Barcelona. I think it's the 3-1 and Rooney scores for United, isn't that? Is it that one?
I think that
that
was
the following?
trying to think. I think that was Wembley, potentially in 2011, and I could be wrong. You might want to fact check me, but
don't want to be on that HMR. Have you seen that guy coming after me being like, "Oh, you got this wrong"?
We don't want to be on that. No, he's calling everybody.
he's hammering the pros. I mean, we're probably like,
no, we're not even
so funny watching that.
But no, I think the Rome one. I'm trying to think.
Oh, it's the boot. Is it the one where Messi scores the header?
Yeah.
Yes, and the boot comes off and he runs away with it.
I think it was that one. Because they were unplayable, and he was just frightening, and couldn't get anywhere near them. And obviously, United had a very good game plan, I'm sure, around trying to stop Messi and the rest of them. But no, they were just on a different
level. There's just nothing you can do. And at that stage, it was like a force. Like it was so unusual for teams to do what they did at that stage. And
yeah, they were right at the very top of that sort of area or that era of Messi, and I think Edo might have been there, and they were just frightening. The possession stats wouldn't have been too kind to United.
No, definitely not.
No.
That's what everybody's looking at now. Pull back. Oh God. At that stage though, you're probably entering your second year. How long were you at United? And did you realise that it wasn't shortly after that you'd potentially be finishing up?
Yeah, and so I was there 2 years, probably signed maybe around 2.5 years before I left, and I'd been over and back in the first 6 months. But yeah, it was 2 years being over there full time and being living there and everything else. And the first year was really tough. Yeah, there's no getting around it. Just really, really difficult getting up to speed. It was a bit of a baptism of fire, obviously, just adjusting to life over there, but as well just adjusting to the speed of everything, the speed of play and the way that other players were wired. They were just on a different level, and it just took me so long to just get around. But my second year was really was quite good. I remember going away in the summer after the first year and thinking, I need to do something. I can't just go away and put the feet up here like the others are. I need to sort of try and make some ground up. So I remember working really hard that summer and going back and doing really well in the second year, at the start especially. And I'd done quite well up until Christmas that year. I'd done well and was making good progress. And then I did have an injury on my left knee. And I'm not going to do this thing where if it wasn't for the injury, it all would have come around.
No, you're not that.
I'm not that person. I don't think it would have. But it did. It interrupted things for me in my progress. And I remember all the other boys being brought in and being told about, whether they were being kept on or being released. And this was probably around February, March time of the year when our contracts were expiring, and they just spoke to me and said, we want to just give it a little bit more time because your injury has obviously kept you out for a couple of months. I made my way back. My knee was still hampering me, and to be honest, it has ever since. And probably one of the reasons why I've retired. But in the end up, the pressure then was crazy because every week I obviously realised I was playing for my future, and it was really difficult coming back from it and trying to play under that microscope. And just in the end, it wasn't enough. And but as I say, no hang-ups or regrets. I put everything into it, and found out close to around maybe May, June 2009 that I wasn't being extended, and that was it.
You were more than happy at that stage. You were like, as you say, you've just talked about, but you'd kind of accepted the fact. But someone who's at United, such a big club, big con, it usually allows kids at a younger age to maybe go and grab another club, or other people will be going, well, he's good enough for United for a couple of years. The standard's that high that he'd be able to potentially do it for us.
Yeah, I think it was devastating at the time. Obviously, being told you're being released, no matter how prepared or unprepared you are, obviously that's always going to be something that rocks you. And it did take me a while to sort of come around from that. But within the space of 2 weeks, I think I was sort of like, all right, what's next, and what can we do? And I was still really determined and motivated to try and carve out a career for myself over there. So I'd say that's when things started to get really difficult, because nothing really transpired and we were going places and hadn't fully recovered, but I was trying to get something through between that period when I'd been told, which was a little bit later than other people, and trying to get somewhere sorted before
So
the
your
season ended.
window of trying to find a club was smaller.
It was small, and that was tough, because I was forcing things, but I was sort of desperate to get another club before the summer came, and it didn't work out, and that probably sort of started a sequence of just things being really, really difficult. I came back home. I joined Portadown actually firstly, which some people don't know. I played there for maybe 6, 7, 8 months under Ronnie McFall, and it just didn't work out. And probably, from my perspective, maybe a little bit, what would be the word? Probably a little bit arrogant, and I thought that I would just break in and play every week, just straight away, coming from England, and I had no real awareness of how good the level was there and across the Irish League in general. And maybe it's
probably so different. As we all know, the Irish League is a different beast compared to most leagues.
Yeah.
But you coming back from a full-time environment going, it's a different league.
It is, and I just underestimated it, to be honest, and I didn't have enough familiarity with the league at that point to understand what the level was and what was required, and I thought I would play more, and I didn't, and I don't even blame Ronnie or anybody else for that. I just wasn't ready, and I wasn't willing to stay there and not play, and then I ended up back at Ballymallard, so that was hard. Yeah.
Moving back though, as a youngish kid, you're probably only 18, sort of 19 at that stage, coming back to Portadown, but mentally, how tough would that be? Because as you say, most people, as I've just said, is most people would usually kind of find a club, or they have to go on trial and they maybe get something for a year and they move their way down. Some people are lucky enough. Obviously, you didn't get that. So were you thinking that that's something that would happen? You would stay in England, you would get maybe another 2-year opportunity at somewhere else, and then another 2-year maybe, and then be back? Or
that's the hope. You just want to try and extend your time out as long as you can. Really, you want to be a full-time footballer, you want to be a professional footballer, you want that to be your career. So that's what I was still focused on trying to make happen. And even when I came back, I wanted to try and make that happen, and I hung on to that for years, probably longer than I should have, really, because it really affects you, and you forget that there's other things outside of football. And but yeah, at the time, I wanted to try and stay there as long as I possibly could. So trying to sort of transition back to life at home and adjust to being a part-time player here, but ultimately to see that you'd gone from being a Ballymallard to going over to United and trying, doing everything in your power to try and be a player there and to be a player at Manchester United. If not, okay, go somewhere else. And that doesn't work out, and ultimately you end back at square one. You ask yourself all sorts of questions around why, or what more could I have done, and what was the point, and you get yourself in a bad place. But I'm lucky that I just kept my head down, and really good people around me, and my parents were incredible, and just kept sort of fighting to try and just make the best of the situation, and try and I was always focused on just trying to be the best player that I could be. And if that was here, okay. If it was somewhere else, fine, but I just didn't want to leave anything behind.
Ballymallard's obviously where you're from, so home comforts is probably one of the best things that can happen. I'm a home bird, like I've never had the opportunity to go away, and I don't even think that I probably would have done well if I actually had the opportunity to do well, because my mum, I wouldn't say my mum made me good dinners, but she tried, do you know what I mean? But whether they were good or not, you still ate them, do you know what I mean? So it was very comfortable for me to stay.
Later on.
But probably. But in terms of that, as a footballing aspect, going back to a club where you felt so comfortable must have been a really good reset for you.
Look, once I'd got over the sort of disappointment of the previous 2 years, and it took a long time to sort of come around to just being home again, it just felt like a second ago, I'd moved, and now I was back. And as I say, it's a lot of baggage comes along with that. You sort of feel like you've let people down, you've maybe let yourself down. But ultimately, as soon as I did get back to Ballymallard and I started playing again, and I was playing every week, and it was Whitey Anderson who was the manager, and looking back now, it probably couldn't have been any better for me, really, just to play every week, knowing that I was going to have the opportunity to make mistakes and get up to speed with the Irish League and the football at home, and having really good people around me, really good teammates. Then we had a good group. So yeah, looking back now, just have really fond memories of Ballymallard and those 3 years when I was back.
Ballymallard got promoted. Was it promoted the year you came back? Like you joined, or were they already in the Premiership at that stage?
No, they were. I spent 2 years in the Championship.
Okay.
And then we got promoted in the second year and went up. Yeah.
What was that like? So you've went from United to Portadown to the Championship.
Yeah.
Surely I'd be thinking there that there's no ego involved. You've, like, a lot of people would be saying, I'm not going to the Championship.
Yeah, I suppose it was either do that or potentially leave the game. And I probably weighed everything up. After I left Portadown, I think it was like maybe February, March 2010, I want to say. And I'd left without having a club. I left mid-season, hadn't been playing, wasn't enjoying it, wasn't happy. Nothing else was really going for me. So I left, and I was clubless probably for 3-4 months, and I had to wait till the following pre-season to get back into it. And at that point, I suppose there probably was a question mark around whether I was going to play or where I was going to go or what I wanted to do. So it took a while to get from there back to a mind frame of, no, we're going to put everything into this and see where it takes us and see what happens. And regardless of where we end up, you just want to make sure that you're the best possible player. You fulfill any amount of potential that you have. And once I got myself into that mind frame, things became a bit easier, and I was just a little bit more sort of single-minded about everything from that point.
Ballymallard ended up being a very good team to not go and play against. As we've touched on, the pitch, the surface, fantastic. The facilities are great, but also a very hard opposition. Doing that drive, it always felt like it was a difficult game to go and play. What was that like, being in that team, knowing like they're going to struggle when they come to us? Although the pitch is lovely, but it was always a very hard place to go.
Yeah, we had really good players. We had a good team. Yeah, we had a good side. We didn't know that we were going to do as well as we did when we went up. We were sort of, I don't know, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but probably preparing for maybe a mid-table sort of fight, or
scrap,
maybe sort of towards the bottom of the table. But we just started really well, and just that momentum continued on. I suppose a little bit like I can see similarities with Bangor at the moment, and the confidence that they've had and the momentum of going up. You sort of carry that with you, but
nobody knows what they expect, do they? Like,
exactly,
it's so different than what they're used to.
I don't think any of our players had played in the Premiership at the time. It was new to all of us, and we were sort of just riding the crest of a wave. And yeah, we had a good side. We had Mark Stafford, who's had a brilliant career, and
he's back there now, isn't he? He's actually the manager.
Yeah, he's the manager now. Yeah, Mark, and doing brilliant. And we had him and Leon Carter's were like a really good solid force at the back for us. And then we had like Jay McCartney, who, don't know if you remember, was brilliant. So
I always remember, was there like a right back or left back called Curry? No,
we had.
He was a youngish kid, I remember.
Yeah, there was.
Very young.
Was he like a
very blondish?
Blonde, yeah, John Curry.
John Curry, yeah.
John Curry was probably, I'm good friends with John.
Yeah.
He was probably a few years later, but we had a great side. We did, and it was just a really good place to be. Really good team spirit. We were a small, sort of tight knit unit, and we caused a good few upsets that season. It was great when we went up.
When you were at Ballymallard, did you play with Shane? I think Shane came in and played in the centre midfield. He was at the Glens at the time. I think he came back.
Yes.
Quite heavily involved with Gaelic, I think, at the time.
Yeah. No, Shane wasn't there at my time. Davy Key would have been there, and
yes,
we had good players. Danny Keoham was our left back. yeah, we just Andy Crawford was there. He's brilliant guy, and just had a really good side. It was great to be a part of it. Yeah, we were really good energy and spirit around the place, and we were probably hard work for the manager, but Whitey enjoyed it too, I think.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
He's got a good character about him, doesn't he? So he's one of those characters that you want in the game. Otherwise, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, he's missed now in the league, but no, Whitey's brilliant. Great.
You get 1 year out of the Premiership before you finally obviously make the move to Cliftonville, where you've kind of built your whole sort of career off, and I would have to go in as far as saying you're easily one of the biggest legends to probably come out of the club in the last few years. But what was that like? What was the initial phone call like? Because I know you're laughing here and we were talking about this, but I have to diverge into some wee things. But rumours and stories. I was obviously at the club at the time. I was only a young kid, and I remember, I don't think I was at the stage where I was able to go away on end of year trips. I think I was still slightly too young on the verge. But
yeah,
how does the initial conversation happen? Because from what I've been told, it was a phone call from a holiday trip, like an end of year trip.
Yeah,
talk me through it.
Yeah, so we'd finished well for Ballymire. I think we'd finished maybe around 5th, which was brilliant.
Incredible.
At the time we were buzzing, obviously, with that. And then end of season, and then I was, to be honest, probably sort of weighing things up. Maybe I was still in the sort of mindset of I want to get back into full-time football and potentially go back across the water. I still had that in my head. So I thought about, what's next. And at that stage, there were a couple of clubs that sort of making inquiries, and I'd spoken to Glentoran at the time, and I was probably close to that. And then a few days later, going back to GA, I'd played a match GA and we lost. I wasn't in good form, and I was back in the house, and I just looked down my phone, and it was Conor Devlin ringing me. I was like, do you know when you look down and you think someone's pocket dialed me, because that person wouldn't be ringing right now, and I knew they were away, so it was just strange. But I answered, and usually I don't, but I answered, and
he's shouting, horse, pick up a phone.
Madness. The noise was mad. People, just, you could tell they were having a good time anyway over in Santa Ponza. All the lads end the season trip, they'd won the league maybe a few weeks earlier. I can imagine the madness that was occurring. And then just went from me coming up from a Gaelic match, sitting down, answering the phone to Conor Devlin, to realising that they're in a jacuzzi having a few beers, and they're asking me would I consider signing. And I just thought, Conor, shut up. You've obviously had a few. But then the phones just started being passed around from player to player, to chairman, the secretary. It was crazy. But long story short, they asked if I'd be interested in coming in, and I took it with a pinch of salt, because it was like, when they sober up tomorrow, they mightn't want
it. Yeah, phone calls continue tomorrow, but we'll
see what happens in the next few days. But that was the start of what has been an unbelievable journey.
Well, as you just touched on there, Cliftonville just became champions. The first time in a long time.
Yeah.
You join the team, obviously you're one of the best players in the league. They obviously want to take you in. You go in, you make sort of an instant impact. You get into the team, but it's a squad that Cliftonville fans will always remember as being probably one of the best squads that they were able to put together. The players in that team were frightening.
Yeah, frightening though. I suppose, you sort of get a pick-me-up, because even to think that they were interested in bringing me in, because the players that they had were just ridiculous when you look back. I mean, Liam Boyce, Joe, in the wide areas, such good players. Marty Donnelly, Stevie Garrett, Dermot O'Carroll. Hope I'm not forgetting anybody. There were so many that could have slotted in. The young players starting to come through as well. Jonty and Katz in the middle of the field. Solid effort. I hate naming players because they always forget people, and then I get a few messages later. But just across the board,
I can't believe you didn't mention.
I know, exactly. But across the board, the squad was scary.
Frightening.
Yeah, it was. So I was just glad to be a part of it, especially after them having won the league just a few months earlier.
It's a very memorable season because they do a double, which is obviously, I think, Dermot O'Carroll is obviously part of the team. He ends up leaving, doing another double, which is probably another talking point, which is incredible. But as we talked about there, the squad is ridiculous, and that whole season leading up to it was just a constant battle between Cliftonville and Linfield.
Yeah, Yeah, it was ding dong that season. I think we'd started really well, and I remember in my first few games, we did really well away from home at Linfield that season. There were a few like sort of head-to-head battles that were huge in the sort of in the swing, the balance of where the league title was going to go. But early doors, I think there was a game that we won 3-1 or 4-2 over their place, and it was huge. And we started well, but then we took a bit of a dip, and they established quite a good lead in terms of points at the top of the table, and things weren't going that well for us, and things were actually started to take a big dip for me. In terms of form and injury, I broke my collarbone before Christmas, and I was out for probably 6 or 7 weeks. And again, you're asking questions around, right, well, hold on, over in England, come back, have to start from scratch. And there were already started to be rumours about will it be going back to Ballymard and all this. So you have to, try and use whatever
activity and all that.
Exactly, try and use whatever resolve and strength you have. And I worked really hard and coming back from the collarbone, and yeah, the rest was just it was insane. The finish to the season that there was, and us sort of trying to claw Linfield back in the last few weeks, and yeah, it's just amazing.
What's that last game like?
Last game was unreal. The last week was just mad because it was a Tuesday was where it was won or lost, because we went to Portadown and I think Linfield played Glentoran. And I think everybody was expecting it to go down to the last game. We played Crusaders on the last day of the season, and everybody thought it would go down to the wire, which would have been tough because I think we had them away from home, if memory serves me correctly. And it was flipped. I think they were really gracious in the end. I think they allowed us to have it at Solitude on the last day. But it was unreal that week. Beating Portadown on the Tuesday to find out that Linfield had been beaten and we won it on the Tuesday. Nobody was really prepared for that, so it was a good party.
The celebrations are mental, aren't they?
Yeah.
One of the good things about it I can always remember is because it was won that early, there was always a reserve game on like the Monday night or whatever. And I remember obviously there was only so many people I had to play in the reserve game. We ended up winning the reserve league. I'm pretty sure the same night, like that night. And I remember the whole squad was in just at the wee door beside the bar on the stand, and the noise. There was only the squad there, but everybody was steaming for about 3 weeks. It was carnage, but I remember playing a reserve game. Everybody was completely out of it.
Brilliant. It was a great time. I don't think people, fully understand how difficult it is for Cliftonville to win a league title. I haven't done it that often. I think it's maybe 4 or 5 times in our history, and they're, one of the oldest clubs, the oldest club in Ireland, obviously. So, it's just a massive moment for them to win a league. To do it back to back was just surreal. It was mad, and just right that the celebrations were what they were and went on for days and weeks.
One of the big things I want to talk to you about is the managerial appointment of Brezzy and Minto, and how much they put into the club, but how much they don't. Obviously, God rest him, he's no longer here. But what were they like? Because the stories that I can relate back, the stupid stuff, the warm-ups, his own wee individual warm-ups, like there was just small things that he done that you'll just never forget.
Yeah. No, he's just brilliant. He's just amazing. Brezzy was just one of a kind. And he was just so good for like a player like me coming in, and
he was never like a mad shouter. He had the opposite side, didn't he, where he was arm around you.
It was always that way, and he was almost like a father figure to so many players. It was a young enough squad, or there were a number of young players in and around it that he would know how to treat, and he's just brilliant. He would just literally go and say, just go out and play and enjoy yourself. Just express yourself. Don't worry about anything else. You're here for a reason. I'm playing you for a reason. You're starting for a reason. Or he just had a brilliant way about him, and Minto, Peter Murray was class.
It was the polar opposite.
Yeah, well, you said that. No, it was a brilliant relationship they had.
He was so good to have around you, but in terms of his team talks,
exactly.
The team talk is. I remember sitting counting on my fingers how many times he like. It's lucky my man's here, I'll be saying it, but he used to swear so much, and you're sitting going like, this doesn't make sense. But at the same time, you were like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Ready to go through it all. But Brezzy would just, when Brezzy would finish speaking, you'd just be like, I really want to play for him, and he's shown his trust in you, and he just wants you to go out and just play and enjoy it. And for that reason, you'd want to go, and do really well for him, but then by the time Minto would finish talking, you'd just be ready
your head
to go
the
through a
water,
wall.
yeah.
And they just complemented each other so well. They were just a brilliant team, and yeah, Brezzy just devastating news when it came through that what had happened, and he's sorely missed every day. Yeah, definitely.
So much success in such a short period of time, and as I say, Cliftonville haven't really experienced so much success in their history. But after those sort of 2 years, it sort of tails off, and it becomes quite a struggle for Cliftonville. But throughout that time, you end up becoming club captain. People start to leave on. Obviously, people get a wee bit old, and there's constant changeover of managers and different things like that. But what was that transition like? And obviously, you being the captain of the squad, it must have been difficult too.
Well, it was tough. Yeah, it was. It was really difficult because I suppose you were fighting with the expectations of challenging for league titles every year, because that's what had been, but it just wasn't. It wasn't realistic to believe that could happen after losing the players we lost, and I suppose you had an ageing squad that maybe won the second league title, and those players were starting to transition out. But I think the main thing was losing Liam was huge. Yeah. To lose a player like Liam Boyce, probably one of the best Irish League players ever potentially, and to try and fill that void, just massively difficult. And that's no disrespect to any other player that came in, because we had some class players that came in, but it was just really difficult to sort of overcome the loss of, because he was so central and critical to the way that we played, and
nobody can do what he could do at the time. Like
exactly
the way he can use his body.
Yeah.
He was the only, like, he could never take a ball in.
Yeah.
The balls used to bounce off shins for people, and he was trapping it, and he was obviously just sliding balls and doing everything, and you're like, he's messing people around here. No, it was fun for him.
Some of the things he did were outrageous, but I think that was huge. That was probably a more significant moment than maybe people thought it would be or remember it being. And yeah, it was a tough few years, no getting around it, trying to sort of deal with that, and to deal with a change in expectation, I suppose, across the board was difficult. Plus, as you say, manager turnover and player turnover and everything else. And I just, I suppose I was thrown into a position along with a number of other senior players where we just tried our best to sort of lead by example as best we could.
Losing Liam Boyce is obviously one of the biggest things, probably, as you touched on there, and I think too that it's hard to replace a calibre of striker like Liam. But unfortunately, fortunately Joe's there, who's probably arguably one of the best strikers the Irish League's ever seen too. He then leaves. He goes to Peterborough, if I can remember. Is it Peterborough?
Yep.
Peterborough. And then we just talked about, we had Jim Boyce on just before you last week, and talking about even now, Cliftonville always seem to get a nucleus of a good team, and then they're like a detriment to their own success. Players who do well, especially centre forwards or attacking players, they always end up getting their moves, and it kills the team. I know it feels like it's like a constant rebuild, but you've obviously experienced that. You've been there the whole time, and as frustrating as that is, you're thinking, if we hold on to like the majority of these people for like another year or two instead, we're near enough there.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think a lot of supporters probably feel the same way, maybe frustrated that we develop a lot of good players and we do a really good job of that, and then the move on. Joe's unbelievable in those 2 seasons after Liam left. Yeah, I mean, you probably would have forgiven him for maybe a drop off, because Liam was so good with Joe and setting up a lot of his goals and stuff, but he was unbelievable.
So ruthless. He
went to another level in the probably around 2014, 15, 16, and yeah, it was no surprise that he got his move when he did. But yeah, then you lose Joe. But in general, yeah, you're right. I think it's just a really difficult job, I think. Managing Cliftonville and trying to manage that turnover and trying to get players in, develop them without them being poached by clubs across the water or clubs down south. And yeah, I think I don't envy Jim and Jared and the job that they have to do. They almost have to reconstruct a new squad every summer, and they're having to beg, steal and borrow, and loan players are becoming a lot more common now. So even there you can do a lot of work in giving players game time and developing them, doing all that work.
To benefit someone else. Yeah.
Exactly. Only to see them go back to their parent club. So, yeah, no, you're completely right. I think it's a massive frustration. I mean, if you look at the last team that I played in, the cup final winning team, such a good team, just a really, really good squad throughout. We just lost maybe 2, 3, 4 really top players. And then you have to do the rebuild again, which is really difficult. So it's really challenging, and maybe that's what's brought about the this whole movement around the potential investment and things like that, to try and maybe start to really build something. We'll see how that turns out, obviously.
Yeah. In terms of what you've been through with Cliftonville, you've been there for a long period of time, and you've got to see success at the start and sort of finish on success, which is probably the way everybody wants to kind of leave and enjoy that. But Cliftonville fans are, as we've talked about, like, unhappy at times, stages, and it becomes very apparent. You can see it, but you are like knocking on the door of leagues for a couple of years towards the end. Obviously, a changeover manager was talked about. Paddy comes in, kind of settles it, and what's it like? But what's it like bringing Paddy in? How different was Paddy in his way looking forward for the club than it was previous?
Yeah, I think Paddy was amazing. Paddy took over from Barry Gray. And Barry, to be fair, I've had a good relationship with all the managers. Barry Gray was really, really close to making history. We got to an Irish Cup final with Barry, lost against Coleraine, and we were right in that game until the late stages. So Barry was really close to making history and making a huge name for himself in sort of the Cliftonville context. But Paddy came in, and yeah, he did wonders in his opening sort of 2-3 seasons. I mean, to get, within a hair of winning the league, when it was probably completely unexpected for us to be sort of part of that conversation. Maybe a year or two previous, I think he did unbelievable things at the club and sort of got us back to that sort of place of challenging and things like that. And then, the work that Paddy did and the players that he brought in, that all contributed obviously in some way to the success that we've had in recent years.
What do you think is the biggest difference that Paddy could offer in terms of management? Like, what was the standout thing? Because when you play against a Paddy McLaughlin team, you just knew that they were very well equipped.
Yeah.
They were set up. You just knew what you were doing. You played football probably which suited the majority of the team at that stage. Mm-hmm. It was no longer a wee bit more direct. And then some of the big questions was like, Paddy was then leaving arguably one of the best goal scorers out, and you were still winning games, you were still competing, and you're like, how is he managing to do this?
Yeah, I think Paddy's probably his biggest asset is probably his he's a motivator. He does really well in getting the best out of a group. He did then, and I think one thing about managers too is their signings, and different managers have different networks and connections and things like that. And Paddy brought a lot of players in from Derry in that area, and a lot of those players did really well for us. So I think that's part of it. And then Paddy got something really, really special out of Conor McManaman, which was huge for us and for Conor. Obviously, he's gone on to great things since that point, but Conor just blew up.
Just took off, didn't he?
I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in football, to be honest. From where Conor was to where he is now, and that sort of transition, it was just huge. And I think Paddy played a massive part in that too. So it's a number of different things. He just changed a few things about and brought coaches in, and just building blocks, I suppose, over a number of seasons, and getting us to a really good place. It wasn't overnight, but between signings and getting the best out of the players that were there were some really, really good players there. You have to remember that Barry brought in as well. So a combination of all those things just took us to another level.
A change of manager then happens again. So Paddy obviously steps away, and you're probably thinking, God, here we go again. We're start fresh. Do you know what I mean? And as you say, there was a lot of success with Paddy. Well, not success, but still successful. Like, you could see the trajectory was sort of uphill continuously. Yeah. What are you thinking at that stage? Because you're probably like,
yeah, to be honest, you probably are, because you're just thinking, it's going to be another rebuild, or what direction is this going to go in, and you're not really sure. I suppose it's just a period of uncertainty that happens when there's a manager departure like that. But I suppose, yeah, there was maybe a chip on our shoulder too, because Paddy obviously had his own reasons for leaving, and they're completely valid, and I've no issue with that. And one of those issues was, just wanting to be closer to home, and obviously went to Derry. But you do, I suppose, as players, sort of feel maybe they don't, maybe they believe that they've taken us to our level.
Yeah.
That could be completely rubbish, and Paddy might say, what are you talking about? But maybe that's just a mental thing that players take with them in order to help them deal with the transition and to get that extra bit of motivation out of it. So I think as a group of players, there was that sort of feeling that potentially there was a lack of belief in the group and what we could achieve going forward, and we wanted to prove that sort of narrative wrong. So
did you feel that yourself, do you think?
I think, I don't know. I think it's difficult for me to say what drove Paddy to make the decision to leave. I'm sure it wasn't an easy one.
Yeah.
It wasn't an easy one, because when Paddy spoke to us, he was heartbroken to have to leave, but he just felt it was the right decision for him at the time. But at the same time, I suppose you're thinking, if the manager really believed that there were league titles and Irish Cups and everything there, would they leave? Maybe not. So I suppose, again, I'm just talking for myself, and that's maybe something that I used as fuel. Maybe
some sort of hindsight there. You're probably just like, if you had and I can totally understand it, but in terms of football's a never evolving sport, as we continuously talk about. But when you have the opportunity potentially to go to your hometown club, and you're potentially going to go full time, and you're going to be involved in a setup like that, it's hard to maybe think, if that's what you're wanting to do at some stage, do you turn it down, never get it, or do you jump and try it? So people's motivations are always going to be different, because let's be honest, if you had another job that was paying you more money for the same thing, most people are going to jump at it.
100%. Yeah, and look, I completely understood why he made the decision that he did, and we didn't want him to leave. Players loved Paddy, and same as what we've spoken about Brazzy and Minto, we would have run through a wall for Paddy. And at the end of the day, Paddy left the club in a much better place than I suppose he found it. We were challenging for trophies again. We won a League Cup in an unbelievable game against Coleraine, and I've a lot of time for Paddy, and obviously there's no issues there, but I suppose it was just disappointing that he'd left. And like you say, we were just in that sort of moment of feeling, right, what's next? Yeah. We were building something, and we were in a relatively good place, although we'd sort of tailed off towards the end of that season. But look, that's football.
These things do happen, don't they?
100%. New
manager obviously comes in, start again fresh, as we talked about. But what's that like for you?
It was brilliant, because I've been sort of considering my own position. I think I was out of contract at the time, and I actually was even at that time. So I suppose this was when I suppose you're talking the year before I ultimately did retire. I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I wasn't playing a huge amount under Paddy, and I was starting to think about what's next and whether I want to go. You know yourself, if you're not playing every week, you're not happy.
Question
exactly. So I was in that mindset, and then very quickly Jim rang me and asked for a chat, and almost immediately I sort of did a 180 and wanted to be part of his project. And you're built up again, and you're feeling really good about what's to come. And to be honest, I don't think anything better could have happened for me or for the club at that moment.
The only thing I'm thinking of here is what that conversation entailed, because he is a character, and I can only picture some of the stuff that he was talking about or trying to talk about and get across. But the way he even says things, he is hilarious.
He's brilliant.
He is fantastic. His stories, everything about him, his enthusiasm.
He's class.
He's somebody that I think, and in fairness, sitting on the opposite side, sometimes hearing him shout at people, you're like, Jesus, settle down a wee
Yeah,
bit.
I
But
don't know. I didn't get much of that. I don't know how, but yeah, no, Jim's class. Yeah, he was asking questions and then answering them himself, and then going on to.
and then you're saying going, yeah, you're right there. Say it again.
That was brilliant. I think he just wanted to get a picture of the squad and what it was like, and full time, part time, what way the training structure was at the time, and you could tell that he was sort of starting to feel the buzz about it and starting to feel excited about the project, if you like, and that was class. It was, couldn't have worked out better, really.
In terms of Jim coming in, there was a lot of harsh things online. Fans obviously weren't too happy about the appointment and different things like this, but it just shows you that when managers start to do well with the team, everything's left. Like,
yeah,
it's only about football at the end of the day. Like, football should only actually be about football.
Yeah,
Jim's career obviously speaks for itself, but what he's done at the club since he's been back is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's incredible, and like you say, there was a bit of, I suppose, there was a bit of negativity around it. I don't really fully understand all. Surely a manager like that with a reputation like that in football, where he's managed in the Premier League and managed these,
it's only going to be good.
I mean,
it has to only
experience.
Yes.
And like I was talking about earlier with player turnover and transfers, even just having that network that he has just been invaluable. It's been huge for Cliftonville in the last few seasons. So very quickly things changed, and that narrative started to sort of die down a little bit, and we could all just focus on football. And but from the inside we didn't really listen to that, and we were on board from day one. And he was brilliant. He built a lot on what Paddy had already done. In fairness, he didn't want to sort of completely deconstruct everything and build. No, he really respected what Paddy had done, and he tried to build on top of that, and he did a really good job.
Me and you done our A license together that season, I think, when he had just came in. We had just finished it off, and I always remember coming in doing a talk, and he talked for an hour and a half about just funny stories of him being in England. But in terms of being managed by someone with that experience, how much different is he compared to other managers that you've had? Like, does it change, like, in terms of just being more curiosity here, but does it change in terms of, like, a tactical knowledge? Does it, the fact that he's played the game at that level and then managed, is there small differences that you can see in his management style and other people?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, obviously, you just have it straight off the bat. I think some managers might feel like they have to earn the respect of players, or maybe walking on ice a little bit in their first few weeks or months to try and, prove themselves or stay on the player side. Managers might be like that, but Jim just never had to do that, because he had that respect instantly from just his reputation, the games that he's played in England and internationally, and the teams he's managed and all the rest of it. So I suppose from that side of everybody, just like in that room at the A license, everyone's just hanging off his every word.
But you're just staring at him like, this is mental.
I know. I don't know how he does. He just has a way too.
It's just so much charisma. It's probably, like, I don't know how to explain it, but he has this way to pull you into his conversations and his chats, and you're sitting going like, I'd want to be there.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I mean, when you're talking about those A licenses, you have ex-Premier League footballers and players that have played in Europe and everything, and even they're just, sitting
tongue-tied
in every word. And
he's so brutally honest with what he says too.
Yeah, he's just, look, he's been there and done it, and he's a great communicator, and he's very good at getting his idea across in the way that he wants you to play. So if you don't listen to that, I suppose it's your own fault when you're not playing anymore.
Yeah, I get you. One of the last things that we're going to touch on here is just the last bit of success just before you ultimately retire. But leading up to that year, Jim's obviously came in, being able to stamp his authority. He's brought in really good players. He brought Ronan back, or maybe Ronan was already back, but the likes of Ben was there. Both of them were shooting, both of them were scoring. Obviously now we're looking at it going, you had to sell your best players again.
Yeah.
But you did get to keep that sort of nucleus for a while. You did get that Irish Cup, which is history.
Yeah.
What's that like for you? Because you're coming into your last sort of spell.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, I'm not sure if I knew at the start of that year that it was definitely going to be my last year, but I had a good...
Before we go any further, did you think, were you like weighing it up thinking this could be me?
Yeah, probably. I was probably well, sort of leaning towards that direction. Yeah,
Okay.
I probably knew, and there was stuff going on in the background. My wife got the opportunity to go over to America, and that was sort of starting to sort of bubble. With the application process for that and the interview process and everything. So that was going on quite early in the season, and we sort of knew if that was going to happen that I would be away at the end of the season. But even if it wasn't for that, I was probably leaning towards just being my last season, just because I felt like that's where I was. But yeah, what a way to finish it off. You're right, like we talked about earlier, just those networks and trying to get those players in. I'm not sure that any other manager or management team could have done that, to bring in the likes of Ashford and Wilson and players like that. We were so fortunate that we had those that came in and made such an impression, and obviously played a huge role in us winning the Irish Cup for the first time in donkeys.
Irish Cup win, first time in donkeys. What was that day like? The Irish Cup is a good day anyway. Obviously, I've been there a few times.
Yeah.
But winning that for Cliftonville must have been one of the best feelings that you've had as a Cliftonville man.
Yeah, I would say it's probably tight, to be honest, between the league win and the Irish Cup. But the Irish Cup probably takes it, just because it had been so long and so many players had come and gone that hadn't been fortunate enough to win it. And for some reason, we were the lucky group that did. But yeah, because I mentioned about the Coleraine Cup final in 2018, I think it was, and that really stayed with us, because you're just thinking, we might never get to an Irish Cup final again, never mind have the opportunity to lift it and win it and everything. So there's just something special about that season and that group, and we were really tight, and it just felt like
it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it did in a way, and I know that's a bit sort of cliche and a bit cheesy, but just something about it. I was very conscious that I didn't want to get carried away with the whole thing because of what had happened against Coleraine in 2018. So I just tried to sort of take it for what it was and soak it all up. But at the end of the day, you want to win. And then after what it was, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or whatever, Linfield scored and you think, here we go again. But no, we kept fighting, and yeah, it just felt like it was going to be our day.
Celebrations must last a good time, but after you win an Irish Cup, you go down in history, right? What made you continue to, obviously you're talking about going away to America and different things like that, but surely there was something in the back of your head to go, just won the Irish Cup, give maybe another year.
Yeah.
Or was it just, this is probably the best time that anyone can buy out of being Cliftonville legend?
Yeah. No, it was probably more that, to be honest. And I think maybe I sort of knew for a good while that it was going to be my last year. Definitely, I think by probably Christmas time of that season. But then I'd communicated to Jim maybe about, I don't know, maybe 6-8 weeks before the end of the season. And I just said, I'm happy. I'm sort of at peace with the decision, but I just want to finish as strongly as we can. And he said, yeah, we'll try and do our best for you as well, obviously. So there were no real thoughts about, have I ever made the wrong decision? No, I was quite at peace with the decision, especially after winning it.
You do go to America, you spend a year coaching. Obviously, you've got your A license now, potentially more coaching on the verge, but do you miss being in football now at all? Or is coaching the route that you want to go down and obviously try and expand that way?
Yeah, I think it's a question that I've been asked quite a lot, is, are you missing it? And I think I do, but I think you always will. I think you probably do, and there are some days you miss it more than others. And I think now being home and going to games, you'll miss it. And if you're watching a game of football, you sort of get that pull that you'd like to be out there again. But I think ultimately that's probably your heart over your head, really. I think I'm 34. When I'm 44 or 54, I probably still want to play, even though I'm not able. So now, no, I'm still at peace with where I am, and I just know that if I go back anywhere, I'm not going to be any more physically able to play at the level that I want to play at 2 years out of the game. Although maybe I could do a job, I'd just rather, I'd rather leave it for what it was. It was an unbelievable 11 years at Cliftonville and a great career, and just really proud of it. So to go back, I don't think would be very wise in the long run. And now, I'm looking forward, and I've got my A license. And I've been doing different things and working with the IFA now in their MPP program.
Yeah.
And working with really, really good young players. So really enjoying that. And everything's good, yeah.
Good. Well, listen, thank you. I think that's probably the best place to finish on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Mate, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. What a conversation. But as I say, you're on the borrowed time, but I have a wee baby soon. So I wish you all the best.
Thanks very much, Jen. Thanks for having me.
We finish on hugs.
Yeah, thank you.
Good man, Bob. Thank you.
Join us next week on the On the Spot Football podcast for yet another fantastic guest. See you soon.